Alright, this quick video segment is going to be an attempt at adapting the wireless remote control to a winch that was not shipped with the wireless feature. Alright, follow along, see if we can be successful at this and learn something in the process. Oh, hey folks, welcome back to KEI Fabrication. Alright gang, I found this 5,000 pound Harbor Freight winch on Craigslist for a really reasonable price. It was a used takeoff of an ATV. It was way overkill for an ATV. Now I have only had a 2,500 pound Harbor Freight winch for like 5 years. Actually probably closer to 10, and I've done everything I needed to do with that winch. It was super powerful. However, it was kind of a critical component to the boat that I just recently sold.
Alright folks, I'm going to give you a setup to step the mast single-handed. So I have a Harbor Freight 2,500 pound winch that has the remote control. I bought the optional fair lead and I made a bracket that plugs in to my bow support. Now this bow support has been extended because this was originally a powerboat trailer and I converted it to a sailboat trailer, so it extends up high enough. I have a clevis here for a snatch block, and you can see that it turns and misses everything, just barely, but it misses, and the cable is up on the jib boom.
And in order to replace that, I let it go with the boat. In order to replace that, I wanted to upgrade a little bit. So that was a 2,500. This is a 5,000. And I wanted the smaller winch because I wanted to be portable to transfer from trailer to trailer, because I have 2 different trailers that I use this with, as well as any other situation. Plug it in the back bumper of my truck, so on and so forth. Well, the 2,500 pound winch came from the factory with a remote. This one has a button style remote, and I've got it hooked to a battery over here in the corner. And so the mechanism, the high amperage solenoid works, the button works. Well, Harbor Freight sells a remote control unit for their 9,000 and 12,000 that is a plug and play. This does not have that feature. So what I'm going to do is I'm hoping to show that this wireless remote control can be adapted to any other winch. Now this isn't rocket science, it's not brain surgery, it's just a matter of basic 12-volt wiring. But you know, the scary part is this was 40 bucks. If I get it wrong, you know, I blow up the circuit board or something, and it was a $40 education, right? So what I'm going to do is take this apart, decode the wiring for the plug, kind of see if I can make it operate this high amperage solenoid, and then I will do a real nice packaging so this as well as this is mounted with the winch. And when I put my receiver on the bottom of this, it literally becomes a plug and play. Just, you know, hook up my main 12-volt battery supply and I have my remote in and out. The remote, I do a lot of things by myself. The remote, the wireless remote, is like mandatory for me. So hopefully this will be helpful to you folks, and we can learn together on this, and it'll help me achieve my goals for my situation. Alright, so unpackaging this thing. There's all kinds of instructions on the back. We don't need those. So right away I've got to get inside this thing, because what I want to do without cutting this off and kind of ruining my chances of returning this, I'm going to try and decode the wiring inside this box. So the first thing I see here is we have these two Phillips head screws. I'm going to make sure that I keep track of those. So two simple Phillips head self-tapping screws into a plastic housing, and then it comes out, and sure enough there's a circuit board in there. So the housing doesn't really have any gasketing on it. It's got a little lip here, so I'm not sure that this is going to be weather tight. So if this works out and I do a full assembly on it and get it all wired up nice and neat, I'm probably going to put some silicone around it. This is a fuse here, and you just unthread it and the fuse holder comes out. This is the traditional glass cylindrical style fuse. So alright, so my plan and the reason for taking this apart is to figure out the wiring here. So it's pretty clear that into the fuse, this yellow with a green stripe is power from your vehicle, and then the red wire goes to the circuit board. If you look, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but the black wire where it's soldered in, there's actually a symbol for ground and the letters that signify the ground. And then so there's 2 out of the 4 wires that come out of this plug. This is a 5-pin connector, but it looks like they're only using 4 of them. Power supply, ground, and then I'm assuming that the blue and the brown is going to be the trigger for in and out on the winch. So this is going to get messy here for a minute, because I'm going to use a whole bunch of jumpers with alligator clips and things to connect this circuit board to the high amperage solenoid and the power supply and ground to the unit. So give me a second to put all those on, and then we'll do a little diagnostic to see which of these wires is in and which is out. And then when you snip this connector off and do the wiring into your high amperage solenoid, you'll know the color codes. So let's hook this up with the temporary wiring with alligator clips and so on and so forth, and then we'll experiment to find out. These are little tiny relays right here. So when you activate this relay might be for the in or out, and then the same for the other. So alright, let's take a minute to get these connected up, and then we'll see what happens when we push the button on the remote. So in case I forgot to show you, this winch is operational. Let's see if it's still operational when we get done with this experiment. Alright, I said this was going to get messy because the size of my jumper cables and everything are not really designed for small circuit board use. I've got the main power hooked up to the big battery, and I've got the ground also hooked up to the battery, and this is a red wire, but it's actually connected to the ground. And I've got my remote here. I know you probably can't hear it, but I can hear it and feel the solenoids clicking. So what does that mean? I've got positive going in the correct place and the negative going in the correct place. Now I need to determine which of the 2 wires that's remaining from my multi-pin connector is the in and the out, and then connect them up to the high amperage solenoid down here. So unfortunately the colors don't match, so we're going to have to do a little bit of investigating to figure out what's going on there. So let me get my jumpers hooked up to the blue and the brown wire on the circuit board, and then we'll plug it into this and see if we can get the winch to operate, and then we can determine which one of these wires is in and which one of these is out. So give me a minute. Alright, so on the circuit board I have this alligator clip hooked to the brown wire, and I just quickly threw it in one of, you know, it's a 50-50 shot, right? So I hooked it to the green one, and appears that that's not the in because the solenoid is activating on the circuit board, but nothing's happening with the winch. Ooh, the winch is going in now, so I've actually got this hooked up backwards. So when I push the out button, the winch is going out. So what does that mean? That means the brown wire on the circuit board is out. So let's double check and make sure that we can make it work for the in. Hopefully I can do this without blowing a fuse because my alligator clips are so large. So we're going to put this on the other trigger for the switch on the high amperage solenoid. And this should go in now. Voila! So what does that mean? You should be able to use the color codes here to adapt this remote control to a winch that does not support this type of connection. Alright, so real quick in review, I went ahead and wrote on the circuit board and get you a better shot of this. So all the way to the right, this solder connection is the out, which is the brown wire. The next one in is the in, which is the blue wire. And then the ground, which is the black wire, is this solder terminal right here. This is the positive, the red. And I'll do a screenshot of this so you folks can all, or I'll do a thing, but so on the solenoid, my solenoid, the green is in, the black is out. On the remote circuit board, the blue actually is in. So update my notes here. So the blue is in and the brown is out. Alright, so again, I'll take a still shot of that so you folks can pause it and write it down. Alright, so now my challenge is how do I package this so it becomes one with the winch. Again, this is something that I want to pull out of a box out of my truck. It'll already have the receiver part on it that'll plug into a standard trailer hitch. It'll have a 2x2 male section that'll go into the female part of the hitch. And I want to package this up so not only is the high amperage solenoid attached to the winch, but the remote box is also attached to the winch, and I want to do my best to protect it from being too fragile and also give it some sort of weather protection. I take this off whenever it's not in use and store it in the truck, so 90% of the time this is not out in the elements, but there are times when you use the winch to maybe bind a load down to the trailer, especially if it's a big and bulky, maybe tarped material you just take into the transfer station or to the scrap yard. So this might get some backwash from the truck going down the road. So I want to do the best I can to prevent this from getting filled with water and not working when it's time to go use it. So I'm going to maybe whip up some sort of bracketry so all this stuff mounts well, minimizes the potential to short things out, and I've got to add a connector because my truck is already wired for the connection I'm going to use the 50 amp connector just like what's already on my truck. I already have number 6 wire running from the battery to the back bumper with a circuit breaker. So I'm going to attach that with enough of a lead that'll reach the truck, because it mounts on the trailer, and the distance from the back bumper where the connection is for this, I need the length of the trailer hitch basically at the minimum of extra cable. So I'm going to put all that together and try to package it as neatly as I can, and I'll show you the finished product. So hopefully this helps you folks out, and if you find a deal on a winch at a swap meet or on Marketplace or Craigslist, you can go buy a $40 remote and you can have the hands-free operation of just about any winch. Alright, let's see how we make out with the final assembly of this. Obviously the goal is after it's all put together, it should still work, right? Let's see how we make out. Alright, we've got the high amperage solenoid mounted, we've got the receiver for the remote mounted, I've got soldered and heat shrunk the connections. I trimmed about this much off of the remote, and then I tied it in to the high amp solenoid, and I've still got the positive cables just running down to a battery on the floor, and I still have to put the 50 amp connector on the end of those cables, but I thought it was important to make sure that this all worked. I'm going to tape all this up. I put kind of like a service loop in here. I'll put a tie wrap around this so this isn't tugging on these terminals. I had to piggyback a ground off of the main ground. The power wire for the remote switch, this is the remote rocker switch that was on it previously. This already had a piggyback off of it, so I put it into the power required to send 12 volts to the receiver for the remote. So the big test is, alright, so there you have it. Can you adapt the Harbor Freight $39 remote control to any winch? The answer is yes. This is just straightforward basic wiring. I didn't film any of the soldering and heat shrinking or the wire crimping or anything like that. So just a little you saw me make the bracket for the receiver. It ended up having enough space to run the cables that run from the solenoid underneath this, wrap around, and pick up the yellow terminal on this side. The blue one loops around and comes back up. So I made a little bracket that goes under the high amp solenoid. The factory bracket didn't work, mainly because the spacing of my hose clamps. I have stainless steel hose clamps going around. So I just made a little bracket that bolts onto the bottom of the solenoid. It gave it a landing pad for the stainless steel clamps, and those same clamps pass through this aluminum bracket, and the bolts clear. It sits nice right here, so it should be pretty well protected. I know that the winch is kind of pointing up in the air, so if I'm driving down the road, the vehicle is going to be this way and the splash is coming this way. So I figured having all these things facing rearward might be the best solution. So there you have it. I'm going to tape these up. Like I said, put a little strain relief on this and put my 50 amp connector on the other end of the power cables, and my winch should be serviceable on my trailer just like my previous one was, and still have the remote control feature. I hope that was helpful and give you folks confidence that you can adapt that remote control to just about any winch. Alright, so to finish this job up, I welded the receiver onto the factory mount plate, and then I welded a big old 1/2 inch chain link for when I use a snatch block and the cable can come around and hook directly into the winch. Alright, let me put this on to that and we'll test drive it on the truck, see how we made out. Alright, I got it all hooked up on the truck. It's working great. I paid the cable all the way out because it was kind of loose and spooled a little crooked on the drum, and then I sprayed some just some like WD-40 on it because they do dry out and chafe. So this thing is ready to haul the next project up on the trailer. Alright, hope that worked for you folks.